So hey,
Well,
hey Belle, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks, Paula. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a beautiful morning here in Sydney.
Oh,
Looks,
even in Melbourne.
look
Look,
at it,
the
awesome!
sun's
Almost autumn weather.
shining through.
And look, before we get into our topic today, what I'd love to know about you is how did your journey into early learning start, and then into running business mentors?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was probably about 20 years ago that I started. I think this is my 20th year in early learning. And prior to that, I was a customer service manager for large AXU organisations, and a lot of my roles and responsibilities seen me working really long days, travelling to the city. Some days, I could be gone 15, 16 hours. And I had two young children at the time. They were both in childcare. Um, and I recall having to leave work and come home so often because my children were being injured or harmed or bitten or whatever it might be. And yeah, one day I just kind of said, I can do this better than you guys. And the next minute I knew I'd resigned and I was studying my Cert 3 and took a really huge financial hit to the back pocket, but that was okay. The direction of my life had changed. It was more important to be a mum and have a work-life balance, and yeah. And then I guess from there, um, I was fortunate enough to get into a centre um, that let me bring my children, and I just developed really quickly. And I think even going back earlier than that, my high school years, I didn't find myself very academic at all. I found that I just went to school because I didn't have a love of learning in any shape or form. It was all, let's get this done so I can become an adult. I need to become an adult. I need to be independent. Like, that was my goal. That's what I was driven to do. And I think I was really pleasantly surprised. Like, I was so nervous every time I put an assignment in. I was like, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail. And I didn't. And I didn't just pass, I excelled. Um, and then I went on to do my diploma because, of course, that was the only way I was going to achieve money. So I was money driven then. I needed to get back to a point where I was somewhat at my pre-career change income. And so I did my diploma, and with that, the team at Customised Training actually nominated me for Victoria Trainee of the Year, and I was successful in that, and I did win that
Wow.
award, and I had to accept that in front of quite a few hundred people, and it was the first time ever I was on a stage with a microphone, and I had to do a speech, and it was a whole variety of qualifications that had been studied. And I remember after my speech, and I was so nervous. I was choosing my words and speaking, and all I remember was this ringing in my ear. And I can't remember a word that I said. It just flew. And after it, the one of the board of directors come up, and she said to me, "Belle, you can be one person in a classroom teaching 20 children, or you can be a director teaching 30 educators, and then they're sharing that knowledge. Like, what is your what's next?" And I just went, I just want to get paid more so I can feed my children. Like, that's realistically what it was. And
How motivating is that? I hear you. I'm the same. It's you the drive when you've got to support dependents.
absolutely, but that's always stayed with me, and and it shaped me. And then I'm like, I really want to. I then became inspired to share my knowledge with my team because I was a nurturer. Even pre having my children, I remember people say, "What did you want to be when you grow up?" And from my earliest memory, my dream was always to be a mum. I
Wow.
wanted to be a wife, and I wanted to be a mum. And because my mother inspires me so much, she's the most amazing mother. And to me, that was the most important thing in life, is family. Um, so that was always my dream, to be the best mum that I could be. And I just remember in that moment, now that I had children, they had redefined me. But I wanted the best for all children. I wanted all children to live in a home where it was no arguments, you know, and it was just conducive and loving all the time, and everybody's needs were met. And it wasn't until I got into this space and I started working in low socioeconomical settings that I realized how sheltered my life was, and how vulnerable and how much emotional, financial, physical abuse was out in society. And that redefined me. So then I went and I did my bachelor degree, and I remember I was a full-time director, 2 children under 3, full-time working husband, and I was studying full-time university. So I did that and I was fortunate the Federation University at the time had a weekend kind of model. So it was study online, and 2 weekends a semester you would go Saturday and Sunday all day and study. So that was my life for 3 years. And I remember studying at 2-3 o'clock in the morning in between feeds, and yeah, it was just crazy.
And so there's that academic part of you, Belle.
Well, I actually finished as a Golden Key recipient in the top 5% of the university, and pretty much got high distinctions on every assignment that I submitted over that 3 years. And again, this is part of my journey now, is there's so many young people coming in that just don't trust that they can study because of their previous experiences. And I believe that it's not about study. It's about understanding what drives you. And children, child development, well-being, disability, that all drives me. So I don't study now because I love it. I study because I love to learn. And I love to learn because I love to share my knowledge with others and empower them. And that's what drives me. Look, I've been really fortunate through my studies to actually really succeed at a lot of things. In 2015, I was the Victorian Tasmania Director of the Year for Australian Families. And that opened up a lot of opportunities for me to meet some really influential people in the sector, and to be able to share their knowledge and partner with them. And it's just opened up doorways. And I've been fortunate to work for a variety of organisations and take on several projects and, support acquisitions and culture change and stuff like that. But most importantly, I love to connect to people and build relationships. And I think that's what's really put me in a position today.
Yeah. Well, what I hear from you though, Belle, just talking about this, is for those young women and men who are listening to our podcast today, and if they feel a bit disheartened about education and that they're not up to doing some study because they just didn't feel like they're academic and they, just did it for almost like a mechanical process to get through, like what you did, there's actually is that ability, just got to look within themselves and trust themselves.
And trust in yourself and believe in you. I think it's really important. As I said, the first 2 courses, I didn't understand my why. It was a necessity. It was a need. Actually, the first course was backed off of a stubborn comment that I made, and I need to finish something once I start it. It's in my personality. Can't leave anything unfinished. But then the second one was driven by money. My third qualification was driven by desire to change the world. And then every other qualification I have following that is being driven by I need to know more.
Which is fantastic, isn't it? And that's where we get to. And that is also experience in life as you go through, when you have that hunger to achieve or to learn. And your awards and things, how amazing is that? And all from, just doing and following your dream.
And most of them have been generated extremely selflessly. I think the Childcare Director of the Year award came around. We'd just gone and got exceeding rating under the first sort of coming out in 2010 from accreditation into assessment and rating. And, I never did that for myself. I drove that for the team and the families and the communities. And it wasn't about it was never ever about trying to get exceeding. It was always about just wanting the best outcomes. And we sat in that pocket of not really, there was there was very little consideration for the rating. It was all about really genuinely embedding best practice into that community, um, and and working with the local centres, the other local centres, in really open partnership, to be able to support our vulnerable families in that community. And it was just the genuineness of what we were achieving and the way we were connecting with the families and the difference we were making in their lives that seen an external person nominate me and our service at the time, for those awards. And it was just the work that we were guiding, that seen that.
But that's how lovely is that? What a great acknowledgement of
One
what
of my
you're
proudest
doing.
moments.
And as you were saying, it's about looking at best practice and all of that, from a not from a selfish perspective, but from a community perspective, which leads me into my next question. For an early learning service, what can you paint a picture of what effective pedagogical practice may look like?
Oh, 100%. I mean, look, I think too, if we look at the word pedagogical leader or pedagogical practice, it's relatively new in our sector, and there's still a lot of young people coming through that, don't really understand. And I think that for myself, like many of our leaders and consultants and specialists in this space, we're naturally born pedagogical leaders. Okay, before we can even identify that that's what we are. And I think that's what's really got me to my position now, is that, if I critically reflect back on my journey over the last 20 years, it's that pedagogy in me that has driven me to be in this place. And a pedagogical leader really is just someone that shares their knowledge with others, is willing to help guide their practice and empower them to be the best at whatever it is in life that they can be. Okay, so mothers naturally will sit in that pedagogical leader space, sharing their knowledge and their influence with their children and helping their children, see how they can be the best, whether it's financially, emotionally, the best partner, whatever that might look like to them. So I guess in our space, a big part of, pedagogical practice, some people sit in the pocket of research and theory and, looking at they might be a pedagogical leader in Reggio practice or whatever. I find myself, I sit in a holistical pedagogical space. I really, believe it takes every element of the early years to do that. So, and that starts at the top. And for me, I'm not talking about a centre manager. I'm talking about approved providers, owners. That's where I start my journey, because it's about making sure the values align all the way through and that we have the care for our team, and it's not just about the bottom dollar. I purely believe that 100% believe best practice is what generates money for business.
Yes.
So if you have genuine relationships and you're really embracing, the National Quality Framework and standards, and you understand it, then that's when best practice is going to come.
And
Invest in
actually,
people.
you probably hit the nail on the head there with the word understanding it, because even now we say the word pedagogy, pedagogical off the top of our tongues. And as you said, it's actually a very recent word into the sector, right?
Oh.
Can I ask you, for those of us who are listening, and even me, is what does it actually mean? Because I am sure there's people sitting here listening who don't really know what it means.
A pedagogical leader is someone who shares their knowledge with others. So, has that academic knowledge and understanding that they're going to guide and share and mentor someone through that same path. So anybody can be a pedagogical leader.
And that's what you're saying about the approved provider, the owners, the managers. They're not just there from an operational perspective, they're actually there as a holistic approach.
Mm.
And just following what you said about your service that went from accreditation to exceeding, it's actually what you did. You embodied all of those elements holistically, to achieve that outcome without necessarily going, we're going to be exceeding. You actually just in the use of a word of inclusion, it's actually about
inclusion and empowerment. Okay, so you have to empower your team to be active, involved, hands-on learners. Okay, so we can't just focus that on the children. Everything in our curriculum is transferable to our team and to adults. So if we've got to provide, if our expectation is to provide a workplace, an early learning service that embodies inclusion, it has a focus on the natural environment. It has, we're holding high expectations for children, but yet on the flip side, we're not doing that for our team. We don't hold high expectations for them. We're so quick to go in and performance manage somebody, but as leaders, are we taking the time to acknowledge the gaps? Have we set them up for success? Have we provided them enough time? Have we really inducted them effectively? Have we supported them with every little bit of understanding of our business, resources, equipment, gloves, all of those things for them to do their job properly? And I will guarantee you that 85% of the time there's gaps. But yeah, what we're going to do, and we're like, no, they're not the right fit for our business. We're going to turn them over. We start turning over, we start managing people rather than leading people, and it has a ripple effect and other people start to leave. And yeah, I think that's my big focus for, the next, moving forward is really looking at.
And you certainly hit the nail on the head there again with the way about that leadership and empowering and mentoring, and having. I hear a lot about, it's anecdotal. It's not necessarily evidence based, or you need to actually know what's wrong or what's going right to get that best practice, and then make that practice consistent and having the information. So even right down to systems and things like that would come into play.
Yeah, and I guess for me, our business mentors, like that, my brand is very holistical. Like, I really believe in working smarter, not harder. And that's in everything. That's in payroll, it's in rostering, it's in the way we, triple handling kinder reports and school readiness funding and curriculum and program planning. And, I take these master classes around and I share them, but I also work one-on-one with approved providers to streamline their practices. It's such a fast-paced sector, forever evolving. We've now got our reconciliation action plans and our quality improvement plans and our child safe standard, goals. And
yeah,
there's so much happening on top of just being with
absolutely.
children and families.
Which is primarily what we're in the business of.
Absolutely.
So do you find that sometimes the disconnect between approved providers and services also create issues in the fact that they've got a head office, or they're not connecting to what's actually happening in a centre? Is there a gap there as well, do you see?
This is where I tread carefully, because I don't like to use public discourse, and I really don't like to generalize our sector.
Yes.
Okay. We have amazing approved providers in our early learning community. We have some really passionate owner operators that I have been extremely fortunate to connect with, to mentor, to work with, and just to have general conversations through an array of forums. So I'm not going to say yes.
Yes, no, that's fine. I didn't expect you to say yes.
I'm not going to say no. So yes, in my experience, there has been service providers that do operate like a commercial organisation, and I believe there are big chunks that they're disconnected for in terms of the reality of what happens on the floor. However, there is a huge part of our sector where we've got amazing hands-on owner-operators that are so connected, and unfortunately, a lot of the time they get a lot of public discourse that they sit in the same category as other operators, and I believe that's unfortunate.
Yeah, no, I hear you with that, and also even I don't think there's anyone actually necessarily sets out to do a negative thing. It's actually quite often understanding and misunderstandings.
Look. I'm not gonna say there's not services out there that aren't driven by EBITDA. Okay, they're not driven by the bottom dollar, the bottom line, the profit, the turnover. However, it's my experience they don't set out to run their services non-compliant. They don't set out to run their services under ratio, and there are absolutely times where we're all put in that position due to absenteeism or hardship or whatever it might be, where momentarily we do sit in that space. And there was a big time coming out of COVID that we just could not get staff, and it's still hard. It's getting better. I feel it's getting better, but it's still hard. And I actually heard something last night that just resonated with me, and it's something I've been talking about in a different light for a wee while now, and that's as communities or whatever, we've paid people. I'm not just talking about early childhood. We've paid the young generation to sit home and do nothing for 2.5 years, and now expect them to go to work and earn probably less than they were getting for that 2.5 years sitting at home, and expecting them to work harder and longer for less than they were getting before. So it's probably going to be a whole generational cycle before we see change.
I certainly hear you with that. It's it was time. It is. We can't.
It is what it is, and we have to. And as providers and pedagogical leaders, we have to accept that, and we have to find ways to think differently than we did before. So it might be that we have to absorb payroll tax, and instead of having 17 full-time employees, we may now have to have 36 permanent part-time employees and start job sharing. And yes, the reality is the continuity from families and children is affected by that, but doesn't mean we can stabilise our workforce and we can stay in ratio, and we can look at, if we're looking at pedagogical leadership, how do we empower a new team of people to take on different challenges? Well, we get to know our team, we build relationships with them, we identify their strengths. One might be able to do music with children, one might really be interested in sustainable or outdoor yards and other excursions. Empower your team to showcase their strength within your service, and create a really beautiful learning environment where all of our teams are involved hands-on learners themselves.
And that's actually drilling into someone's passion, someone's drive, and
that's how you build workplace culture.
It is, and even the impact of that is then to your families and all of those other things that you're talking about, where you might have job sharing and part-time and balance of the week, rather than someone working a 12-hour day, they might be doing 2 6-hour, whatever it is. All of a sudden that becomes minor when you're actually looking at the big picture with offering those other options and that passion around what they do.
And I think too, sometimes we're scared to educate our families. Like, another space I sit in is OH&S. So, it's about supporting our families to understand when we face challenges in the workplace, we've actually got a right and responsibility to protect our employees too. So,
yes.
And to look after their health and their self-safety and their well-being. So don't be scared that families will leave because you've made changes to your workplace. Educate them about how you're respecting your employees and you're putting their rights first, and and your families are going to respect you a lot more for taking that step and empowering them and being an employer of choice.
Yes, and in fact, I know myself, when I've got 3 children, when you think back, what you go in as a parent to look for is how do they treat not only the children, but how they treat their staff, how they treat families. It's a big picture. And that's how I always looked at it, was are they caring to everyone, therefore they'll care about my child as well. And I don't mean that people don't care, it's the perception.
Absolutely. Always smile.
Yes. Now, look, this is actually great, because it's leading on to my next question here, and look, you've pretty much answered it, but I'm sure I'm sure you have more to say, Belle. a lot of early learning services have a lot to deal with. How do you create and maintain time to deliver effectively?
Look, it's a skill. It's a learnt skill. It's about effective time management, organisational skills. And I think if I sat here and told you I had all the answers, that every director would just, or leader, just switch their mics off and stop listening because they go, who is this woman? Um, I can guarantee you in the life of a director or an operator, you can't plan a day. You absolutely can't plan a day. You walk in and I guarantee you something on your to-do list that was there at 9 o'clock in the morning, still probably not going to be achieved by 3 p.m. in the afternoon. It's such a variable workplace. But what I would say is make yourself a calendar of things that need to be done every day. So we know we want to get around, we want to see our team today, we want to say hello, we want to check in, we want to know how they're going. We're going to have to attend to our emails and our wait lists and all of those things in between. But highlight a few things. What are the must-dos? What are the things, the deadlines that have to be done today? And start with them. Get them done because it clears your mind. Okay, the pressure's off. I know that's done and I can get through, and then work towards those other things. But we all know we're more likely to succeed if we have a written goal and we have a written plan. And they might be like our professional development plans. They might be a short-term, a mid-term, a long-term plan. But we have to have daily plans as well. It's really important. And if we don't achieve our goal today is to check our emails and whatever, it might be okay. You haven't done that by 10 o'clock. Just change the plan, but you still want to achieve that goal. But you've got to be flexible and don't put so much pressure on yourself that it's 11 o'clock. I haven't checked my emails yet. That's okay. Relax, fit into that. Just know that will happen. And again, you don't have to own the world. You've got to empower your team around you and know and build meaningful, reciprocal relationships with your team so you know who to trust and you know who you can trust and who you can rely on to do. I'm sure that you don't have to do that tour at 11 o'clock. You're not the only person that can convert that into a booking. Trust your team. Empower them that they love your business and your brand as much as you do, and they will succeed and they will thrive, and it will become a holistical workplace where everybody has roles and responsibilities and you'll be able to breathe again.
And that then comes back around to that leadership and mentoring.
Absolutely.
And professional development, isn't it? It's actually about bringing your staff up to a level as well that lets them grow.
Yeah, and I think one of the workshops that I've been really focusing on this year is effective leadership and workplace culture. And because, hopefully you can hear it in me, I'm extremely passionate about that. Okay, and I think you've got to understand the type of leader you are. And a lot of time, leadership, and especially being a centered manager or approved provider, it comes with a different level that we don't expect. We can be the best room leader, the best educational leader, the best early childhood teacher, but all of our learnings are often sitting in the academic space. And once you move into that, you become a debt collector, you become an administrator, you become a HR manager, and you are exposed to a whole different side of the business that you have never, ever seen before. And it can be extremely overwhelming. And you can have this vision that you want to go in there and create a service of excellence with the best curriculum because you know it inside and out. But all of a sudden, 80% of your work is driven by relationships, creating rosters, collecting debt, and dealing with performance management. And you had no idea that your business even looked like that because you'd never been exposed to it before. So I think that a big gap in moving someone internally into management is that leadership. They're not understanding what leadership looks like, what it entails, the HR, the OH&S side of things, the responsibility, the law and legislations that we have aren't just early childhood related. We're working with WorkSafe, council regulations. It's just a different space. And we need to support and mentor our teams through that and train them and make sure they are set up for success and not failure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, look, that's priceless, really, what you've just said. It's actually a very nice recipe, for want of a better word, about if our listeners here thinking about how do I start, what do I look at, and looking at, that bringing your staff up, that leadership, that mentoring, start there. And of course, talk to you, Belle, at our business mentors if they need some support.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. Now, my last question here is looking forward in the sector over the next 2 to 5 years, what are the big issues for you?
resetting. 100% resetting. I think we've had so much change. We've spent a big chunk of our time coming out of COVID just trying to staff our centres, try to not cap our occupancy, turning away children because we don't have staff. Our sector's been really damaged with not professional development, but bringing new people in, our overseas students. We've got this graduate diploma happening where we've got ECTs coming into our space with no prior experience and no prior knowledge, but they've got this qualification where they can lead kindergarten programs. And I think we have to embrace that. That's what it is. That's what our today looks like. So how do we look at our curriculum? We need to go back to our philosophies. We need to reset. We need to unpack. We need to look at our current situations today, and we need to reinvest in what we have. We need to reinvest in our trainees. We need to reinvest in our teams. And hopefully by reinvesting, resetting, restarting, we can regenerate and bring back some of those amazing educators that have felt the stress, felt the pressure, and moved on to try other things, because I genuinely believe their heart is in early childhood, and we need to stop selling them the dream and we need to deliver them the dream. We need to reset our services and bring these amazing people back into a space where they can be nurtured, loved, cherished, so that they can nurture, love, and cherish our next generations moving forward.
And in fact, I'll just go back to your point earlier in this, that reset. Actually, it's not about having that 6 till 6 workday. It's actually about looking at ways to move forward, maybe part-time job sharing, restructuring and resetting isn't just about our mentoring and leadership in practical, in a theory base, but also practical terms.
Absolutely. And I think it's also about understanding where we are right now. Like we've got, since COVID, we've got reconciliation plans, the child safe standards, we've got so much happening, and it's been thrown at us all, and I won't say thrown at us, it's been there for a while, but I guess the reality that this needs to be embedded practice now, a lot of us, it's not reflected in our policies. It's not reflected in our procedures ethically, like authentically. It's not reflected in our philosophies and our practice. So we need to reset, understand what that looks like, and bring it all together.
Yes, absolutely. I think you have, it's, and what I really love, you've talked about the way you're talking about the issue is looking at the way we're staffing and the issue around staffing and resolving that, but not from a let's just hire everyone. It's actually a holistic approach that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is fantastic.
And if we don't feel like they're getting the academic training outside, we need to stop. We need to embrace the positive. This is what it is. Our workforce is growing. How do we back onto that and continue to support, educate, and upskill the people coming in with these fast-track qualifications? Stop being resistant to it. Embrace that we've got something to help fill these gaps, and we need to step up and we need to educate and continue to mentor them, because they're doing it for a reason.
Yes, absolutely.
There has to be passion. There has to be drive. Yes, some of it is around, getting their place in the amazing country that they want to be in. But let's embrace that. Let's continue to support them on their journey.
Because no matter where you work in early learning, if you're coming from that really good mentoring and leadership base where you've got that support, wherever you are in the world, you will continue to put that practice in.
Paula, every human wants to feel loved. every human wants to feel desired or know that they're worth something. No one wants to feel worthless or unappreciated. It is our job as leaders, no matter how we feel about an individual, to embrace them, support them, nurture them, and help them grow.
Wow. Well, on that note, that's just lovely. Before we wrap up, what I really love to hear from our guests is, do you have any wise words or mottos that you espouse to or you'd like to share with us today?
Paula, you know I do. I absolutely do.
I know. Are you going to stand up and show us the back of it?
Okay, I will. Look. So I walk around with it every day. Can you see that?
Every moment is a teachable moment. That is awesome.
And it's something that, I absolutely believe in life. Like, if a child is, wanting their shoes on, do you just go and do it for them? Is that holding high expectations for children? Use that moment as a teachable moment. Support the child to put their shoes on themselves and have a go, and let them know that you're there to support them. If an adult comes to you and, is complaining about a situation at work, don't answer it. Don't resolve it for them. Empower them to unpack it themselves. How do you think you could resolve this? Because a lot of the time they just need your support, and we're so quick to do things for people that we're not upskilling them, we're not empowering them, we're not motivating them, we're not giving them the tools to, challenge life themselves. So I absolutely live by every moment's a teachable moment. I live it. I breathe it. It's been part of my life well before childcare.
And I'm with you on that one. I think it's so important, and that's how our next generation is going to learn about, the changes and the post-COVID. How do we learn? And we're actually all learning, all of it.
Absolutely.
Even us with, pre-COVID life experience.
We know we're lifelong learners in this space.
Yes.
Lifelong learners. If our children are lifelong learners, we're lifelong learners. Hence why I continue to immerse myself into conferences like Immerse and, ACAV, like I'm part of so many different organisations, and I actually still go to other consultants training sessions because we learn from each other, we grow with each other, and I don't see it as a competitive space. I think we all have something that we have to offer, and if I need to recommend another consultant or another professional development, or even my own services, I bring other trainers in to teach them, because no one likes to hear from mum's never right. And it's about building those professional networks, because we're all here to make a difference to the lives of children,
and that impacts our next generation.
100%.
Yeah. Oh, look, Belle, that has been a wonderful morning with you. Thank you so much for your time. Now, what we'll do is we'll share everything we can about Belle and our business mentors, and anything that you'd like to share that you think would be of interest to our audience, that would be great. And we'll get this out on all our socials as soon as possible. Thank you so much for your time, Belle. It's actually been a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you, Paula, and I look forward to seeing you next Friday.
Yes, bring on an ACA Victoria Summit. See you there. Thank you.